Ever get that feeling like you're watching a highlight reel, but it's playing in reverse?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Like, instead of a slow motion victory lap, it's a train wreck you can't look away from.
Exactly. And this time, the train wreck has a name. Tomas Repka. Czech football legend, tough as nails on the pitch, but man, his life off the field. That's a whole other story. We're diving deep into that dissonance today.
Right, the rise and fall of Tomas Repka. And we've got a lot to unpack because this isn't just your typical athlete gone bad story.
Okay, so for our listeners who might not remember Repka at his peak, let's rewind a bit.
Right, so picture this. 46 caps for the Czech national team, right? A mainstay for clubs like Fiorentina, West Ham.
West Ham! That's got to be like a badge of honor for a certain kind of player. The fans loved him there.
Exactly. And for good reason. This guy was known for his hard tackling, no-nonsense defending. He was the kind of player opponents hated to play against, but fans, they adored him for it.
But then things take a turn. And not just a little stumble, we're talking a full-on header into the penalty box.
Yeah, 2019, it all kind of comes to a head.
2019, that recently. I feel like I'm getting old.
You and me both. But yeah, 2019, Repka gets slapped with a 15-month prison sentence. And it's not even for, like, assault or something you might expect from a hard man like him. It's fraud.
Fraud? Seriously?
Yeah, apparently he sold a luxury car that, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly his to sell.
Wow. Okay, that's a bit more than a parking ticket, all right? I mean, you figure a guy with his career earnings, what's the motivation there?
Right, like you'd think he'd be set for life. That's part of what makes this whole thing so perplexing.
It's like the ultimate own goal, you know? But okay, fraud, that's bad, but was it like a one-time thing? A moment of,
See, that's where it gets really interesting. Turns out Repka already had 2 suspended sentences, both for drunk driving.
Okay, so the guy liked to live on the edge, even off the pitch.
Seems that way. But the thing is, that fraud conviction, it was like a catalyst. Suddenly, those suspended sentences weren't suspended anymore.
Oh, wow. Talk about your past catching up to you.
Yeah, he ended up having to serve an extra 9 months because of it.
Man, you almost have to feel bad for the guy. Almost. I mean, the contrast is almost Shakespearean, right? On the field, all discipline, all focus, a true team player. Then off the field, it's like a completely different script.
Totally. And that's what makes this such a fascinating case. Because you see this a lot with athletes, right? The pressure, the fame, the money, it can warp your sense of reality.
It's like that old saying, money doesn't change you, it just amplifies who you already are.
Exactly. And for some people, the transition out of professional sports is tough. You go from this life of routine, of structure, of constant adoration, and then suddenly it's over.
Yeah, like what's a retired footballer supposed to do? Open a pub.
Well, some do. But you're right, it's a huge adjustment, and a lot of athletes struggle with that. Then you factor in things like potential financial mismanagement, maybe some lingering injuries. It can be a recipe for disaster.
It's easy to forget that these guys, these legends we put on pedestals, they're human too. Just because you can bend it like Beckham doesn't mean you're immune to the same temptations, the same pitfalls as the rest of us.
And we kind of expect these guys to be role models, right?
Right.
But as this whole Repka situation shows us, that's not always the reality.
For sure. It's sad, though. I mean, here's a guy who achieved incredible things on the pitch, but his legacy, it's tarnished, overshadowed by these really avoidable mistakes.
That's the real tragedy, isn't it? That his talent, his contribution to Czech football, it all takes a back seat to this narrative of recklessness, of poor judgment.
It makes you wonder, how much do we as fans, how much do we factor in an athlete's personal life when we assess their legacy? Do we separate the art from the artist, so to speak, or are those lines always going to be blurred?
That's the question, right? Because we like to think we can separate the two, but
it's hard, right?
it is. I mean, think about it. Does Repka's story make you see some of your other favorite athletes, even the seemingly squeaky clean ones, in a different light? Makes you wonder what goes on behind closed doors, behind that carefully crafted public persona.
It definitely makes you think, and that's what this deep dive is all about, really. Getting people to think critically, to look beyond the headlines, beyond the highlight reels.
Absolutely. Because in the end, the Tomas Repka story, it's not just about one man's fall from grace. It's a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the brightest stars can stumble. And sometimes those stumbles, they have lasting consequences.
And that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We'll leave you with that thought. How much do you factor in when it comes to your sporting heroes?